and gentlemen, the 3 knockdown rule is in effect on Triller, a very special edition. My co-host, Mario Lopez, and we are welcoming back another guy that's going to make a return appearance here in studio, the great Joe Goosen.
Hey, the man, the myth, the legend. Before we
you.
get to Mr. Goosen, quick shout out, of course, to Smokin', Tim Frazier, Justin Buffalo Knuckles, and
Tino on the edits.
Great to see you, Joe.
Oh, Mario. It's really great to be back. It's been too long. To tell you the truth. I had a great time last time I was here.
I know, we always enjoy you.
And you look great.
Thank you, sir. You, sir, always look great. Sharper than ever. Not only one of the best trainers in the game, but the sharpest dressed guy in the game.
Wow.
And you seem busier than ever.
Yeah.
Which I'm so happy to hear. But to jump right into it, I know you've been working with Ryan Garcia as of late. Congratulations on the last fight. Your thoughts on his effort versus Isaac to go? It's kind of hard to fight a guy who's not willing to engage, right?
You just said it. I don't like to ever demean or criticize too harshly guys that get up in the ring, and it's a scary proposition to get up there practically naked and then maybe staring up at lights in a few minutes on your back. So, but let's face it. I think the obvious was the obvious. Emmanuel to go. Talked a good game, but when it came down to it, he got hit in the second round, and he said, "That's it." He said, "That's it." He packed it in, and then he really, I mean, I don't want to say he boxed. He ran. I mean, if I'm going to be honest, he ran pretty good, and man, he could do some MMA stuff because once he got a hold of you, it was hard to get out of those clutches. So he was a great grappler, and he really kept moving the whole fight. He wanted nothing to do with Ryan, and in spite of that, Ryan almost stopped him 3 different times. I want to say the second, maybe around the 5th, but most certainly the 10th round when he threw a great right hand. Ryan did and caught him. So he was in great shape to go because the little bit he did engage, or even when he didn't, and Ryan was able to force himself upon him, he was able to land some good shots here and there. But like I said, if you put 100 guys on a list, 99 of them wouldn't have done what he did, what To-Go did. I'm saying 99 guys would have given an effort to win the fight, and that's when Ryan's at his best, is when you fight him.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And To-Go was To-Go. And I mean, look, that's the type of fight that old school Teddy Brenner, matchmaker for the Garden, he literally would have gone in the middle of the fight and said, "Kid, if you don't start fighting, we're not paying you." That actually used to happen.
Yeah.
From a technical standpoint, what Ryan could control fundamentally, were you happy with his outing, though?
Yes. Yeah. I'll tell you why. I take things into consideration, and namely, he had been out for 15 months. He had just had surgery maybe 4 months before that on his wrist. And let me tell you, it was nasty. When I got to camp and I looked at it, I went, "Oh, boy, this is very sensitive." And the surgery spot looked very raw.
And what was the issue? You broke a wrist, or
He had some fractures in there. I think multiple, and it was very, very it was a bad situation. I sent him to Curlin and Job, and they're the best in town, maybe in the country, to tell you the truth, especially for athletes. And they did a great job because once I got to camp, we laid off of sparring for a little bit, let it rest, wrapped it right, and he regained some strength. But still, he sparred a lot with it, but you could tell it was a little tentative on the bags with it, but he's over that hump right now. So taking into consideration that nasty surgery, the fact that To-Go wasn't fighting, because what he was doing to sparring partners was nothing short of spectacular. And I mean good sparring partners. Probably brought in 10 guys, so there was not one guy that didn't get dropped, buckled, or stopped in sparring, and that's almost never happens in sparring. You've been around,
of course,
both of you guys.
Of course, especially considering the layoff there. And the camp is in San Diego, correct?
It was. Ryan made a move out here with his dad, so he's in my gym now.
Oh, nice. So it's nice he's in Ten Goose now.
Yes,
Nice.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, exactly. I'm really, really, excited. Look, wherever Ryan was going to be, I was going to go. It didn't matter. I really get along with Ryan. I really like him as a person. We get along really well. I've known him since he's been 17. He trained at my gym, for about 6 months. So,
Joe, do you think that's why when he decided to part ways with Eddie Reynoso that you got the call, the familiarity?
I think so. Well, here's the thing, Steve, is that I never really lost touch with Ryan. We talked a lot. His little brother Sean trained at my gym. The dad was there, and Lisa, his mom, Henry, the dad, and Ryan. And I used to drop Ryan and Sean off at his sister's house that lived in the valley, not far from the gym. So, I wasn't doing that for everybody, but we got along well. He's, like I said, he's got a great sense of humor. He's a highly intelligent young man. Trust me when I tell you that. He's got great instincts in and out of the ring for all sorts of things. And we talk at length about things. But, I stayed in touch with Ryan. He would call me after fights, and then he'd pop into the gym every so often, and, we'd have a hug fest and talk about things. So, yeah, the relationship was always good. And he's a great kid. I love Ryan.
I'm glad to see that he has someone like you in his camp, because I think he needs someone with the intelligence and the experience and has been in the game to kind of to keep in order, like an Obi-Wan Kenobi, if you will.
I'm not going to deny that.
Yeah,
just don't call him Yoda.
Right.
I didn't go Yoda. I went the cool young Obi-Wan on that reference. And correct me if I'm wrong, Joe, but last I heard, a fight is still on in July, correct?
July 16th, yes, at the former Staples Center, which is now called the
Crypto.com.
Right.
And for the record, as we're taping, there is not an opponent yet. Here's my overall question, though, beyond that. When do you think he's ready to really challenge some of the bigger names at 135?
I think that's going to probably manifest itself after this next fight. I think we're going to have somebody that's going to fight us, and that will bring out the best qualities of Ryan, his speed, power, his willingness to fight. And we're working on a lot of things in the gym. We're trying to implement some new things and new ideas without really trying to reinvent the wheel here. Ryan is a naturally gifted fighter, and certain things feel real comfortable to him. So you don't want to change those too much, but you maybe just add a little influence on everything that he does well.
Well, Joe, this is what I love. I walked into your gym a couple of weeks ago. I saw a Cobra bag, and I was like, that's interesting. Someone must be here. That was the first. But I've described you as Vince Lombardi. You still tackle. You hit the blocking sled.
Yeah.
You have long, arduous training camps.
Yeah.
I've been there with 3 hours where you're putting guys through the rigors for 45 to 50 rounds of floor work.
Yeah.
Did he ever rebel against that?
No. Ryan he's a workhorse. And in regards to the Cobra, it's not a Cobra bag. It's the Fierce Reflex bag. And
get it right, Kim.
Yeah, the FR, as I call it, the fur. But the FR, and let me tell you, if you watch Ryan hit it, okay, so I say it's comparable to a double end bag, but better. Why? It has, and I love the double end bag, and I still use it for everything, especially the real taut one, the double, and the FR is. Ryan does things on it that are incredible. Plus, it has a lot of resistance. The top level FR bag is got a tighter spring, tighter coil, and it gives you resistance. So it's double end bag doesn't give you a lot of resistance, but this does everything a loose double end bag would do. In other words, it'll come back at you. You can slip it. You can parry it. Mm-hmm. You can block it and counter off of it. Ryan does all those things and then fires on that thing. But again, it's got weight to it. It's got resistance. So it's not like a double end bag that doesn't have a lot of resistance to it. Now, I like the double for close inside work. But again, the FR bag, that Ryan hits, I mean, he's been hitting since he's been a kid. So it's unlike anybody else hits it. And he is just it's a show, and he loves it, and I'm sold on it. Like I told Steve, I'm Justin Belieber in the.
Look at you with the modern references right here. You know, it seems that long gone are the days, unfortunately, where you saw a lot of fighters fight like 5 times a year, especially earlier in their career. That. So do I. Yeah. But is it far-fetched to think he could fight 3, maybe even 4?
Well, I think it's going to be 3 this year.
Which is busy by today's standards.
It is, especially when you're up at that level, because you know it takes time to promote these things.
Sure.
But I really, you hit it on the head. Most of the guys that I worked with over the decades ended up with 50, 60, 70, 80 fights. They fought a lot in the prelims. I mean, Gabriel and Rafael Relis had like 24 fights in the first 2 years.
Yeah, exactly. And we won't see that again.
No,
anymore,
you're not going to see that.
No. Isn't that crazy?
The business has changed with the guaranteed minimums, and so every show has a budget, and there's also a finite amount of dates related to TV slots.
Doesn't that affect? I'm sorry, but doesn't that affect the level or quality of the fight, development of the fighter? Right?
Yeah, of course. Look, the more you can get up there, the more experience you're going to get. So by the time you get to the top, you've got some real knowledge behind you.
Right.
You've got lots of styles you've fought, different quality guys along the way. But the fact of the matter is, I mean, if you fight 3 times a year, 4 times, 5 times a year, I would feel that you would be rusty. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Because the more you fight, the really less you have to train.
Exactly.
Like a wild man. But see, when you have those
Watch it, unless you have to watch your weight. All that.
They become fat camps. Yeah. They become fat camps. And look, when Michael Nunn,
you're right in that.
When Michael Nunn won his title, it used to be in that era with Buddy McGirt. He'll tell you this: you had to have 30 to 40 fights before you fought for your first world title.
How many did Hagler have?
Hagler fought for his world title in his 50th fight. Didn't win until his 54th.
50th fight, Joe.
Nowadays,
can you believe that?
And nowadays, Mario, what happens is guys get up there at 12 to 15 fights. They win a title, then the money elevates, and then all of a sudden, at age 23. At 15-0, they become twice-a-year fighters. That's modern-day boxing, unfortunately.
Right. It really is a shame because, when you fought over and over again,
second nature
during the year, you're right. It's not a fat camp. You're going from one fight to the next. You don't have to do an 8-week camp. You do a 3-week camp because you were fighting after 3 weeks to a month at most.
And it seems counterintuitive because you're leaving money on the table. The more you fight, obviously, the more money you're going to. So was like that De La Hoya era the last of his? Was that sort of the last? Because I remember he fought like 5 times.
5 times in 1997.
Right. Was that like sort of the last of the Mohicans during that time?
I'd say probably around that time or thereafter, pretty shortly.
Yeah.
And look, I mean, I just think what happens now is the money is so big at the top of the game that it takes a long time to put everything together. It's not like you can throw, these pay-per-views together quickly. You have to hype them up. You have to get guys to sign.
Right.
And so Joe, another factor.
That's 2-3 times a year maximum.
Exactly. Joe, another factor is, and this is what I argue with people all the time that say, well, it's safer this way if they fight less. And I say, yeah, you're right. What if in between 2 camps, though, they have to spar 175 rounds? Is it really safer? Right. Back in the era when guys were busier, you didn't have to spar them as much, Joe.
That's exactly right, because it's just like, in baseball, you play, 162 games a year. It's like, how many spring training camps do you need? You don't, because you're sharp all the way through. If you're playing that many games a year, it's like you don't need any extra training. Just get your glove and bat and go out there and play again.
When I started the conversation, Joe, I was happy to hear that it seems like you're busier than ever now. So you're putting in some long hours over at 10 Goose with various fighters. So what are your current days looking like?
Well, I mean, it doesn't matter to me. I mean, they are more, but I got nothing else to do. So,
And you love what you do.
I do.
That's the best, when you love what you do.
I told Lupe Valencia, Ryan's manager and attorney, when he called me, I said, hey, Lupe, for me to pack my bags and go out the front door is hard. But once I go out that front door, I'm a road warrior. I'm a killer. So I embraced that whole 2 months sitting in a hotel and condo by myself for 2 months up in San Diego, but I loved it, because I was very focused And Ryan, you know, is that way too. Once the work starts, man, that guy's a killer in the gym.
Joe, you have a new heavyweight, though. And it's funny, I'm just talking to him a couple nights ago, and he just slipped it in casually about what his schedule is. And I said, whoa, excuse me. You said you had Frank Sanchez.
Yeah. He goes, what? Yeah, well, Frank Sanchez is a byproduct of the Ryan Garcia scenario, because Lupe Valencia is his manager as well, along with his partner. And then Henry Garcia, Ryan's dad, works with Frank as well up in in San Diego. But now Frank's at my gym as well. So between Chris Areola, who's going to be fighting in August, Frank Sanchez, who's going to be fighting, I believe, in July, early July. And then I've got Giovanni Bruzon out of Cuba, big badass southpaw. I love him. And then one of my favorites is my fighter out of the Olympic team from Armenia, Gurgen Hovhannisyan, 6'6", 280. He's 3-0 with 3 knockouts right now. They both just fought on the last card at the old StubHub with the
Dignity Health Sports Club Ticket Center.
Right.
They change it every 2 minutes. So yeah, exactly.
So
you got a full plate.
4 heavyweights and Ryan. There's 5 guys, but you know I give a lot of time to each guy individually.
Sure.
You know,
there are only so many hours in the day. You got to train some for. So yeah, you could spread them out and spread the love. That's awesome.
That's it. And like I say, I've got no complaints at all. And because first off, yeah, it's work, but I mean, isn't that what we work for, to work?
Sure.
You know?
Exactly.
Yeah. So I got no problem with it. Believe me. Plus, you know, I'm sweating. It keeps my weight down. I'm not, you know, like I said, I've never been really over it, but I like the fact that, you know, it keeps me active. So
active, doing what you love, and it's incredibly exciting. And still doing a little broadcasting when you can.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
And you're great. You're good at that. You're good at that.
Yeah.
I enjoy seeing you right there.
Thank you. Yeah. I'm still. Yeah. I'm in the 4th year with Fox right now, and
which, by the way, is a whole nother skill set. A lot of people don't realize that, and you're good at that, because one would assume just because you've been immersed in a certain sport or have experience in it that you can get behind a mic and talk about it.
Right.
Not as easy as it looks.
No.
People are not as comfortable or as articulate.
Well, thank you. I thank my parents for that. They spent a lot of money on I have 8. There's 10 of us.
Right.
8 boys, 2 girls, and they sent us all to private Catholic schools. So.
Good parents.
Joe,
they did a good job.
In the past, you've said, Steve, I don't watch every fight, but I do know since you got the broadcast gig, you said, Steve, I have to prepare, and you're a real pro.
Yeah.
The extra boxing that you watch in terms of the research, has it made you a better trainer in any way?
Well, I don't know about that, only because I always watch boxing. You know, I love watching stuff from the 70s, from the 60s, from the 50s. Man, those are some killers. Mm-hmm. Those guys fought a lot, and they fought hard. There wasn't a lot of distance between them. That's why when Ali came on the scene in the 60s, they're like, what is he doing? He's running, you know. Nobody moved like that, really, right? Mm-hmm. Would you agree?
Right, and they also had horsehair gloves. That's a different animal.
Well, they had horsehair gloves up until just recently.
Wow.
The Reyes gloves, now, if you want to use their horsehair, you have to special order them. You know, I have fighters that watch fights with me, and they go, are those gloves like small? I go, well, they are comparatively speaking. But the Reyes were horsehair up until just recently. Now they're foam, but if you want the horsehair, you have to special order them. And they are a puncher's glove, as they called them, you know. But I will tell you, the Everlast mechs are
comparable.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
They're very streamlined. If you press on them, you're going to feel some knucks. You know, yeah.
Okay, note to self.
Joe, you had the honor of calling one of these fights, and since then they've added a chapter. Wilder Fury 3, we know the way it played out. A young man that we're both familiar with, Malik Scott. I believe you actually trained him for a while. I remember I spent time with him at the gym. Do you think that the Wilder camp and that whole situation, did they do themselves a disservice by just going right back into the Wilder fight instead of Fury fight, instead of having a tune-up or a test run with Malik in the corner with Deontay?
Well, I think you're taking a chance sometimes not just going for what's in front of you, because that's a big, big payday.
Yeah.
He's already in his 30s. He had already
got to take the bird in hand.
Yeah, you really do.
Had been knocked out.
And
He's vulnerable.
And I'll tell you what, Malik Scott, is a high IQ guy.
Yes.
Listen, I had many Malik and I love Malik Scott. He's one of the greatest. He's a great conversationalist. He's a good person. He's fun to be with. He's intelligent. He breaks things down. He's curious. And he's insightful. I think he was probably one of the better picks, to tell you the truth. Now, Deontay Wilder has got a mind of his own as well. So I don't care if it was me he brought in, some old veteran, or a new newbie like Malik. He's probably going to be Deontay Wilder. Now, do I think Malik got more out of him than his previous fights? I think so. Well, look, he had Fury down. He had him hurt. It was one of those great back and forth fights. I think Malik did a great job with him. I talked to Malik about it, and he was getting some extra work out of Wilder that wasn't happening before. So it might have been the perfect thing. Malik's younger, more vibrant, and that alone can carry, some weight.
Seems to relate well personally. He seems to relate very well personally with Deontay, and I think that's important.
Well, that's the thing, Joe. I mean, at this point, too, or at this level, I should say, with most of these fighters, they sort of are who they are. You can refine them, but at the same time, correct me if I'm wrong, when you're training them, you're almost more of like a therapist, a psychoanalyst, a cheerleader, a father figure, right? You're wearing all these sort of different hats to kind of be the voice of sanity in this insane sort of environment.
And this is why I told you earlier, I complimented you. You go down the rabbit hole really well mentally on this. And Steve, of course, I've told him he's genius. So
don't get crazy. Don't get crazy.
Oh, gee, thanks,
it's
Joe.
true. I've known Steve for, I don't know, over 2 decades.
No, I agree.
And we've had many in-depth conversations.
Yes.
He knows his game. He trains at a gym for how many years? You've been training at a gym?
I started training in like 1999.
Okay, so
I've beat up many heavy bags.
Okay,
he talks a lot at the
doesn't
gym.
matter.
I know that.
You've been there. You've been there to observe, and I told you too when I got here. I said you're incredible. Your instinct for this game is just amazing, because you do so many other things. I don't know how the hell you have time to actually assimilate all the information that you're able to relay on air. Because I listen to you guys, and I go, wow. It kind of puts me to shame, because I really don't have the knowledge you have. I have what I do down pat, but you guys are really good at covering the whole gamut. But you said it right. Wear hats. You got to wear. I think I've whittled it down to about 6 hats.
The Mad Hatter.
Okay.
The Mad Hatters.
Right. Because it's true. It's true. You're many, many things. Because you don't really have a coaching staff. You got a head trainer, you got the fighter, and it's basically you two.
Right.
And so everything. So when there's an injury, you better know your medical stuff, and you better have a good Rolodex on doctors and chiropractors. There's always family trouble. There's always girlfriend trouble. There's always money trouble. There's legal trouble. There's
fathers.
There's just distractions. It's just constant distractions pulling you. Real quick, not to go down the weeds too much, but I just wanted to take real quick, Joe, on as far as sparring is concerned. What does it matter? Is it more about the age of the fighter? How many fights? Obviously, when they get older, they want to taper off a little bit. But what is the proper amount in your eyes? How do you?
That's a good question.
What's the criteria as far as how many rounds you want your fighters to go?
Listen, I remember the great Jesus Pimentel. Remember him?
Oh, Little Poison.
Little Poison. Yeah. He had about 80 knockouts. Yeah. These guys really fun. Yeah. And he told me one time. He goes. I think he was referring to maybe Frankie Duarte. He goes, he's a veteran. He knows how to fight. You don't have to spar him like you do a young guy that needs to learn more. So I never forgot that. So again, your question has merit, because when you like Chris Areola, Jonathan Wally, my trusted associate, I've brought up the past 7 years in this game. And he's got, but you talk about a knack for this game. He's going to be a great trainer one day. He was surprised because when I took Chris to fight Kovnatsky, my first fight with Chris, I don't know if you ever saw that fight. It was a barn where
that was a great fight.
They broke like 5 heavyweight records, and Chris was like on top of most of those breakages. And I thought it was just a neck-and-neck fight. And I don't think he did Kovnatsky much good because after that fight with Chris, he was never the same.
You're right.
That being said, Chris didn't spar a lot in the gym, and Jonathan's going, hey, man, how come we aren't sparring? And I'm remembering the Pimentel thing. And after the fight, Jonathan goes, I get it now. He goes, he's a game player, man. Just put him in a fight. It doesn't matter if he has 4 rounds, 40 rounds, 400 rounds. Chris Arreola knows how to fight, knows how to turn on. Get him into shape.
Just get him in the shape.
At a certain point, less is more.
Right.
Less is more.
You don't want to leave it in the gym.
Well, look, he was 38 years old at the time.
Yeah.
You know, he had fought everybody. We worked hard on the now. If you don't work hard on the floor and not spar, you could be in trouble even as an old timer. But Chris worked very hard on the floor, and we did a sufficient amount of sparring. And like I said, I didn't need a war for Chris in the gym. Just bring in some regular guys that'll work in a good way, and let them get the timing down a little bit.
As it relates
That's the most important thing.
to Frank Sanchez, you told me something, and you said this about other guys. Steve, sometimes a guy can box, and I got to teach him how to fight. That applies to Frank Sanchez.
Yeah. Well, I announced his last fight, which was New Year's, this past New Year's, 22 in Miami. And, they brought in a guy that was a late replacement, maybe 4 days before the fight. Tough guy. But there was so much Frank could have done. And, it started out okay. And then at a certain point, you got to pick up the pace. You got to know who's in front of you. And, at a certain point, like George Foreman says, when you're a heavyweight, you got to fight like a heavyweight. Mm-hmm. And Frank was just, I think, not being active. But again, you can't go to where you're not being instructed. And if you're not working on that in the gym and doing drills that apply towards that, oh, yeah, I need you to go inside. Well, are you doing the drills and the sparring and the whole thing that goes along with that to teach the guy how to press, close it up, and then, do a real attack when you get a guy that's already pretty much under control? So, in that fight, even Canelo got up and started demonstrating ringside what Frank should be doing. Mm-hmm. And it was pretty much what I was saying on air. You make the effort to get a jab, right hand to the body. You're there, finish it. And he was pulling back out, and I was commenting on that. So those are the things that I'm working on. So, and like I would say, Frank Sanchez on the perimeter is great. Mm-hmm. But there's, 2 different distances. You've got right in the center of the hurricane, and then you've got that, that medium mid-range distance, and then you've got the, arm's length and then some. And he's got the arm's length and then some down pat. So I'm working in the center with him right now, and we're working our way out.
That's how you make the complete fighter. That's a great analogy, and you're right. Distance is so incredibly important. Yeah. You mentioned Canelo right now. We were on the record from the beginning thinking that Bivol was just all wrong from the style, and not even so much the size, because we've had him in here in the studio, and he makes 168. He told me easily. So he is a naturally bigger guy, but not that much bigger. No. And we thought, wow, I don't see really how Canelo. It's just a bad matchup. But we didn't know if he would eventually get the nod, because there's a difference between whether he would win and actually get the official decision, right? But were you surprised with his performance and the way he was able to stay composed and able to do it? Bivol, correct. Sorry.
Well, I think before I even did any investigating, the word was, oh, this guy can fight. And
mind you, a guy with what, 13 fights?
He was 19-0.
19 fights again too, but a vast, obviously.
But he probably had a big amateur.
Of course,
yes. Exactly.
Hundreds.
And that goes a long way. So the word was, this guy was very capable. and people are saying it's probably going to be the toughest guy that Canelo's fought, maybe besides Golovkin at middleweight. That said, I think Bivol was just what he was he was consistent. Everything he did was consistent.
He was disciplined and consistent.
He was very disciplined, and I think that goes a long way.
And not intimidated.
No, and if he was, he didn't show.
Correct.
You know?
If he was, he didn't show.
Right,
You're right.
you know.
You're right.
Everyone's got a little bit of that, thought.
Or he didn't fight intimidated, I should say.
No, he didn't.
Right.
But and nobody gave him a reason to really fight any differently than he fought. Meaning Canelo. Now I want to ask you a question, because this is what I heard, and if it does, this kind of explains a little. Did Canelo go vegan for this fight?
That's the rumor, and that's what he's.
So nobody's confirmed that.
I don't think anyone's.
Well, he said that, but you know what I think is a bigger factor, and I don't like it. I heard he golfed every day. I heard every day. I know people in that camp that every day after training, he had his golf spikes, took his clubs. Now, people say it's only golf. Here's the problem: you're putting a lot of stress on your back, and the other thing is you're on your feet.
Well, hold on.
Get off your feet.
Okay,
but he golfs a lot, though, Joe. That's what I'm hearing. I'm like 5 days a week.
Now, Joe. Now, granted, it's a violent move, I guess, too. But wouldn't if a fighter does something as low impact as golf and it allows them sort of an escape with the balance? What are your thoughts on that?
I wouldn't. The only thing about golf is that it's a different mechanic.
Yeah.
And there's, do we hear about golfers injuring themselves? Yeah. I mean, they get strains, they pull muscles, they get elbow problems.
The disc.
The
exactly. Disc.
Right. So I would just rather, let's golf every day after the fight.
Yeah, because at that level, you're right, though. At that level, when you're at an elite level, those things, I guess, can factor in.
Getting off your feet.
Well,
I mean, that's the whole thing. I mean, you've already worked, and you want to spend another 3.5 hours walking around in the sun.
But Kim, I don't want to say because he's vegan and he played golf, that's why he lost the beaver.
No, it's not. But are you saying?
I will tell you this, though. Okay, I mean, protein is a big factor for
absolutely.
Athletes,
and a guy who's never looked gassed before, he was breathing heavy early.
That's in the third round.
Yeah,
I don't
that
know.
was surprising.
Because people were saying, if I go, well, I don't care. You can eat, whatever you want. I really don't care.
Which, by the way, for a Mexican is crazy if you're a vegan. Well, how are you going to give up tacos?
Well,
Right.
Oh, yeah. Well, then maybe I'm Mexican because I eat tacos probably 3 times a week. But, I'm just saying, it's if that was true, that to me is a big factor because it's your fuel. Well, I mean, you're a high performance, like having a Lamborghini or Maserati. You don't want to put in regular gas. You don't want to put in, some diluted form of fuel.
It's true.
You want to put in the best source of protein you can into a fighter. And I'm no doctor or strategy, but I do know a couple of things that there's, amino acids that you can only get, from red meat. It's certainly protein is, you get your zinc, and and other, thing. I mean, I know how I feel after I'm wiped out and I eat a nice steak. I go, damn, I feel much better.
Yeah, so I'm right there with you.
So, and I can't tell you another fighter that I've ever trained that didn't like to eat his share of, red meat, poultry, fish. It's a rotating
traditional
thing.
Proteins, sure.
Yeah. So. But that's the only thing I thought. I go, man, something looks off on him. And then I started hearing, people that he's vegan. I go, well, I wonder if that's a correlation. Mm-hmm. But again, I mean, look, I'd say Bivol was probably the biggest factor in the fight.
Joe, your thoughts? You don't have to give a prediction. I don't want to put you on the spot like that. Spence Crawford, if it happens in 5 months, some of your thoughts.
I mean, look, there is such a thing. That the bookmakers put up on their deal. It's called a pick'em fight. That's as close to a pick'em fight as you can get, isn't it? Don't you think?
Agreed.
Yeah. So I mean, when you say who do you like, I mean, I like both guys. They're both great fighters. I mean, Crawford is he can do a lot of things in the ring. I think he's very versatile. I think Errol is maybe not as versatile. I mean,
but what he does well.
But what he does great, and he's dangerous. and he looks better each time I see him, especially after that car accident. That could have really, I mean, I don't know how many guys could have come back as well as he did from that. So I'm really I'm proud of him there because that's tough. But you know, again, that's a pick and fight. Now I think, you know, Crawford, Spence being a southpaw is a little added flavor to it. You know, that I think.
But isn't Crawford the greatest switch hitter you've ever seen?
Well, that's what
he could
I'm
turn
saying.
himself right around too.
But I know, but will he fare better against a southpaw? Him switching to southpaw or being right-handed? That I don't know. I think Spence would probably like to have Crawford stay right-handed a lot because that's, you know, his whole style is southpaw is based off of right-handers normally. And then I'd be curious to see how well Crawford does as a southpaw to southpaw. But again, Spence is a full-time southpaw and Crawford isn't. That's why I say it's very intriguing. I think it's probably the most intriguing fight out there right now. I don't know. I mean,
I agree with you. I've been clamoring for this fight for a couple of years now, and I do think it's a pick'em fight. I slightly lean towards Crawford only because I've seen him make so many great adjustments with so many different styles.
Yeah.
He adjusts. It seems like he just takes like a few rounds to kind of figure you out and get his rhythm. And then once he adjusts, that's it. It's like full on attack. And he's got a nasty streak, a mean streak to go along.
He does.
Right?
Yeah.
But like you said, I mean, I like Spence a lot too.
Yeah.
Because Spence seen a lot of styles himself as well. Strong kid, big for his weight class.
Yep.
He seems to have come back nicely out of the accident. So yeah, those are the kind of fights that
Speed and quickness, I think, favors Crawford, and I think he's grown into 47 the last 2 years. I think that's a factor. Speaking of welterweights, I know me and you have been high on him. I remember I turned you on to him because you were part of the panel when I was at ESPN, best fighters under the age of 25. And I said, Joe, you may as well take a look at this guy, Jaron Boots Ennis. And Joe, you literally called me the next day. You said, Steve, put that guy near the top. Like, you kind of knew even before you faced him with Sergey Lipinets.
Right.
Is he real?
Forget about it. This guy's he's crazy. He's really a middleweight in a welterweight's body right now.
Oh wow, he's that big, huh?
Yeah, he looks bigger when you get in the ring against him.
Yeah, he does look big in that ring.
Yeah.
Get 30 hours to rehydrate nowadays.
Yeah,
that's a
and
factor.
he seems like we had him on that too long ago too. I mean, obviously fundamentally sound and a great little fighter, but he seems to have a nice infrastructure around him too with his father.
Let me just tell you, his
grounded, right?
Yeah,
like a good kid.
you hit it on the head again. His father's a great guy. I really hit it off with him, even though I went up against Ennis with Sergey Lipinets in Connecticut. The father's a class act. And Dron is a great guy. Now, he's very focused. And believe me, they've got a great routine of training that is very demanding and highly skilled stuff. I've watched their training routine. I go, wow, they've implemented some really nice tactics in the gym. And it shows with Dron. Look, I mean, I don't care if you're fighting your grandmother. It's hard to knock out 29
fights, 27 knockouts.
Yeah, you're exactly right.
Try that.
One of them had tough chins.
Yeah, you know, Jonathan
Exactly.
Wally worked the corner, and I asked him afterwards, I want to get his view, and he goes, Steve, this guy is a combination of Marvin Hagler and Ray Leonard. I go, whoa, way to go, Steve.
Well, no,
I'm being serious. He's that good. That's what Jonathan told me.
Wow. So, I would love to see down the line, and I know it's not around the corner, but him and like a Virgil Ortiz, which are young, strong fighters in that welterweight. It could be like a potential Spence Crawford if the trajectory of both fighters end up going in that directions.
I will tell you at this point, I don't see anybody beating Jaron Ennis.
Ooh. Anybody, which includes Crawford and Spence.
I just said anybody.
I just wanted to make it clear.
Stutter, Kim.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify.
Yeah, he's not. I don't even think. What is he? He's young.
He's only 24.
Oh wow, he's not even his real man strength yet.
Ooh. He's a monster.
Wow, that kid's.
Now, I'm not saying. I mean, look. I mean, obviously, Spence and Crawford have worked very hard, very long to get to where they're at. Jaron is just entering that phase. But I'd say if they were all on equal footing in terms of experience, Jaron Ennis would be he'd be the guy if they all had come up at the same time. You know, like Spence and Crawford have earned where they're at. That's why they're number 1 and 2 in my book, not Jaron Ennis. But Jaron Ennis, when he hits his peak like these guys, at that point, nobody's going to beat him.
Yeah, Breadman Edwards out of Philadelphia. Good boxing mind, great boxing mind.
Oh,
He said, Steve, he's the best fighter out of Philadelphia since Bernard Hopkins. He said, I'll be stunned if he's not a champion at 47, 54, 60, and maybe 68.
Wow.
So no pressure on him, but the ceiling is very high.
Bold statement.
Speaking of a high ceiling that was
And
never...
I agree with Breadman.
Yeah, speaking of a ceiling that was never reached, and the peak was with you, and I wanted to ask you this. Michael Nunn was about 35-0 with you, and then there was a dispute, and he left. It was never quite the same. Out of all the fighters you have worked with, is that your greatest what if?
Yeah, I think so. I don't... Look, guys like Jaron Ennis, guys like Errol Spence, Crawford, Mike Nunn, they come around every decade or so, and as a trainer, you're lucky to get that material to work with. Now, have all trainers that have, been around for long, have you made a silk purse out of a sow's ear before? Yeah, we've done that. Okay, we've done that. But
a great analogy.
but a guy like Mike Nunn is like, he's a once, every couple decade type of guy. If not, I don't know. I've never had anybody that had that type of talent.
Was he the most natural fighter you've ever worked with? Who was the most natural-born fighter?
Well, see, and that's the thing about Nunn. When you have a natural fighter like a Ryan Garcia, see, they're natural fighters. And if you get them at a young enough age, like I got Nunn right out of the Olympics, he was the alternate to Frank Tate, who won the gold medal.
Yeah.
Now, 20-something fights later, we fought Frank Tate and we knocked him out.
Wow.
Dismantled him.
Yeah. My brother
incredible.
Dan said Frank Tate won the gold medal, but we got the gold nugget in Mike Nunn, and we did. He was all he needed was to be taught the professional game. Frank Tate had more, he came from Texas, more of a professional influence in those neck of the woods. Where Mike was from Davenport, Iowa, and the boxing gym didn't have a ring. I mean, that kind of tells you.
Nobody comes out of Davenport. Wrestlers come out of Davenport, Iowa. Not boxers.
The only
That's
other
crazy.
athlete is
Antoine Eccles came out of.
That's right. Oh, he could crack. I remember Antoine Eccles.
yeah.
But generally
I trained
speaking,
him
that's
for a
not a
bit.
boxing hotbed.
No, it's not.
Yeah, I remember you trained him. That's right. He could crack Antoine Eccles. I remember that.
Oh, yeah. I trained him for a bit. When we went to Davenport when Nunn won the title against Tate, Dan and I, they had a parade, the whole thing, and we went to Pena's gym.
Yeah.
And we were surprised that there was no ring there. And Dan, my brother Dan, being the good-hearted man, he went out, he hired guys he had a ring built for.
That's awesome.
What did they do? Set up cones? 4 cones?
But I'm always
Quarter?
but if you think about that, to be
it
able,
was just like, here's the tape. Don't go outside the.
but those fighters that they do have to be naturally born fighters because usually your environment makes you good, right?
Terence
the quality
Crawford's
of sparring.
out of Omaha.
That's what I'm
There's not
saying.
a lot of
Terence
guys.
Crawford out of Omaha. Yeah. You've got Nunn out of Davenport,
Davenport.
Iowa, or what's his name? Virgil
Ortiz.
No, not Virgil Ortiz. The one who had
Hill?
like 11 kids.
North Dakota. Oh,
North Dakota.
Yeah,
What's his name?
Bismarck, Virgil Hill.
Virgil Hill. Another great one. Out of North Dakota. Who the hell gets good out of it? Coming out of there's 5 people that live there.
Hasn't been
You
another
know what I mean?
fighter
How do you
since.
get good living out there?
What a beautiful athlete he was.
Well, that's my point.
God.
How does one get? You know what I mean? You can see a New York and L.A.
Philadelphia,
Philadelphia. You get that.
Cincinnati.
There's 5 people that live there and they all play hockey.
You're right.
So how does one get good? If at that World, it's amazing.
No, you're right. It's really. I guess the only thing is that maybe when you're from those obscure towns, you get grabbed by the amateur movement and you get taken around the country for tournaments and through osmosis and coaching, you get better. And that's what happens to a lot of these guys that are from the small town.
Got it.
Going back to Nunn, did it get contentious the last few camps? I remember the HBO features, the pre-fight vignettes
You
would
remember
actually
that?
talk about it.
Right.
So what was it like in camp, the last couple fights, when you know that this could be coming to an end?
I didn't like it. I'd spent probably 6-7 years with Nunn, 6 days a week, sometimes 7 when you're up in training camp. I spent a long time with him, many years, up in training camps. And those were grueling, you're away from your. I missed a lot. Baptisms, funerals, weddings, birthdays, graduations, because you're up in a camp up on a mountain, tucked away.
There's no season; it's all year too.
Yeah, it's all year. Yeah, there are no baseball, say football. Yeah. So I put a lot of work into that, and so did everybody else, quite frankly. And even none put a lot of work into it. So, but when that came down, I was. Look, I was. I don't want to say shocked because sometimes you can see things coming, but there were some telltale signs. But it wasn't a happy time. We had, Nunn was he was our franchise player.
The thoroughbred.
And our franchise player. In other words, we had put a lot of time, effort, money, and labor into it to where, you deserve a payoff. I mean,
of course.
The fighter deserves a payoff, the trainer, the manager, everyone that worked so hard for it. And that payoff never really happened. And it's unfortunate because when Mike left, and I still talk to Mike to this day, listen, I don't hold a grudge. And Mike will be the first one to tell you he's probably made a mistake there.
He was never the same, by the way, and that's the greatest compliment I could give Joe Goosen. There's at least 4 fighters that are really good fighters that left Joe Goosen were never as good, and guys in their physical peak: Lance Goofy Whitaker, Joel Casamayor, Michael Nunn.
All those guys peaked with you.
Right. You got a better memory than I do.
I'm looking out for you, Joe.
Forget all that.
Yeah. Joe, we have got to bring you back every couple of months. I just want you to know you have an open invite.
I know. I could tell you to hang out here and talk to you all day, Joe.
That's fun.
Yeah, so come on. Next time we'll bust out the tequila.
Yeah, next time. And
I'll bring it next time.
And me and Joe will talk about this, about why fighters are not the most exploited people in the game. It's actually the trainers. And I think we need to get a trainer to actually talk about that because, quite frankly, they're the most unprotected people in the business. But we'll talk about that next time.
I'm not going to deny that. That's a touchy subject.
Got to come back, Joe.
Thanks, Mario.
Thanks for taking the time.
And by the way, thank you for representing me.
Oh, what a shirt.
Rocking the shirt. We're going to take a pic right now.
Yeah, and thank Ricky. Thank you, Ricky. He gave me the shirt.
That's right. Funes. Shout out to Funes.
Right. Wow, Ricky. Listen, Ricky is family to me. He's been with me since he's been 14.
Love that.
And he's now mid-40s, I told you he tagged my gym.
Yeah, that's how you met him.
The first day I opened it.
It's a great story.
In 1990, 91, whatever it was, and tagged it, and then he left his name. Okay, good.
It's like an autograph.
So I had a few contacts in the neighborhood, and they rounded him up and brought him there, and I gave him the old what for. He was only 14, and then he wouldn't leave me alone.
Yeah, that's great.
All right, well, Joe, we can't wait to have you back. This is it for the 3 Knockdown Rule on behalf of Mario Lopez, Smokin' Tim Frazier, Justin Buffalo Knuckles, and Tino on the Edison. Of course, Mario Lopez. Goodbye, everybody.